Hi, David here, the Dallas SEO Geek, and this video is about how to know if SEO worked. This is something that I think there's been a lot of confusion on, and it's very difficult for me to explain this fully to people. It just takes sometimes it takes several tries to explain how to measure this, and sometimes people have metrics set up that are not a good, accurate representation of what is really happening. And so, and then I had someone recently ask me this, and I just think it's a really great question that's important, and that is more difficult to answer than you would originally think. You'd think it'd just be really obvious. We know when SEO is working, and sometimes it is, but sometimes it's a little bit more complex. So let's just take a look at an example. There's two primary metrics. We got rankings and track. It should be search phrases. 100 to 5,000 search phrases. Here's an example, and I just put it in a spreadsheet, and basically once a month or maybe once a week. It's just kind of, this is my own thing, so I pull it sort of randomly, but for a client it would be regularly right around the first of the month, every month, and then you can see how much improvement there's been, and this is usually about a 3-month or 1, 3, or 6 months to look at what the change is, so you can see from when this was last compared to it's gone up 3 positions. And this is just how you would track something. You track it, and you can see over time my rankings are going up for search phrases that we think there is traffic for. Okay, and even if you're going, let's say you went from 99th, so on the 10th page, to the 2nd page, it's not really going to provide you with traffic and money, but it's progress in the right direction. And then the next thing that we have to measure, the second metric, is traffic. And this is something that technically someone could fake this, but it's pretty hard to fake in. Ultimately, you'd be able to figure it out with the data and with the amount of leads you got. So, but let's assume that the person who you've hired for SEO is completely honest with you. So what you can see here is traffic from the search engines. You can see, and you can compare it to, well, is it increasing? So this is a 90-day period. Is it increasing? Well, increase, doubled over. That's basically over a 90-day period. This is traffic from the search engines. The social media did increase, and that could be a result of the SEO. But at a minimum, we know that SEO is working here, and even the rankings. The rankings don't even have to work out. If the traffic is there and it's growing, then the SEO is working. Now, not every month is up, and some businesses that this is not. You can't do this quite as simply. So let's usually rankings appear first, and usually you see it. You have no rankings. Let's assume you have no rankings. You're starting from nothing. You get onto the page 3 for some term, and you're like all of a sudden on page 3 or 5 or somewhere around there, and you go, wow, that's great, and you're starting to move forward for that. But at that point, you're not really getting traffic because you're not ranked highly enough, but you're getting closer to it, right? It's pretty rare to go from nothing to high first page very quickly. There's ways in which you can do it, but it's not really something that is you can reasonably expect to build something lasting on. Anyway, I digress. But there are potential information disruption, that's the best way I'd put it, to the rankings that make it maybe not seem like things really are. There's a couple different, in both ways. Sometimes it makes it look like there's not traffic when there actually is, and sometimes it makes it looks like the traffic when there actually isn't. And one thing it's bad at is for very unlikely or super low volume search phrases. You can't really track every search phrase. You try to track as many as is reasonable. Usually I don't track more than a few hundred, but sometimes I go and track a lot of search phrases. But even if you track 5,000, there's basically an infinite amount of possible search phrases out there. So you cannot track them all. And so this can mean you're getting a lot of low volume traffic. Sometimes you can get a lot of that because it's a very large percentage of the traffic out there. And so I do have a client site where the rankings, they're really big terms, and the rankings are improving, but they're not really high enough to where I would think that they would drive a lot of traffic. And so there's a large amount of long tail search volume that we can't really tell exactly how it's coming, because Google doesn't pass that data anymore. They used to pass, if you get a visitor from this exact search phrase, they would pass that search phrase. They don't pass it anymore. But even without that, we can have an idea for if that's what's actually happening. Again, we have the rankings aren't great, but we get the traffic. Why is that happening? This is one of the cases. You really have to consider long tail versus high volume. You want both. That's part of the plan. But if it's a high volume search phrase and you're going up, then the long tails you're going up as well. And sometimes, just since they're less competitive, if you target them right, you can go up really quickly. Then traffic doesn't always give you the whole story. Traffic's not as simple as, okay, well, this is how much we got this month, this is how much we got the previous month. No. Well, first of all, there's other forms of marketing offline, social media, and paid traffic that can affect these numbers. Technically, you get search traffic and it really be direct mail. So let's say you send out a direct mail piece with your brand name on it, and the website isn't obvious, so a lot of people go to the search engine, they type in your brand name, and then they go and they click on your site. Google's going to say that's search engine traffic. Okay, so this is a case where these numbers up here might not be 100% accurate. You have to think about that, right? Any sort of offline or other social media or paid traffic can affect your search engine traffic to a certain degree. And now you'd have to put all these pieces together and look at how they fit together to make a whole system analysis of it. It's not one thing shows you everything. You can't. A common example that is very frustrating when someone picks one search phrase and they say, and that's all they look at. I've had that with a couple clients, and it's just like, that's not how this works. It's just not how we measure traffic. And I tried to explain this to them over and over and over again, and it just didn't, I'm not sure why they just kept focusing on that one search phrase, no matter how much I tried to consult them to not do that otherwise. I'm not sure why they hired me if they didn't listen to me. I'm not going to question why everyone does everything. Okay, anyway. So, if you have a cyclical business, some people have 1 month, this one specific search phrase can be 10 times just a couple months later or a couple months before. That happens. And if your business is cyclical. There's a lot of examples for this. And in this case, it becomes more difficult to analyze traffic because you really need years of data and not months. You can't say, well, this month was up. It was because of SEO. I got more SEO traffic. Well, but relative to how much expected search volume if our search engine traffic increased by 20%, did the total amount of searches increase by 40%? It's something you want to know, right? And the situation can go the other way. You can have an increase in rankings and improvements, and the traffic is going to go down. So I highly recommend that you install some sort of tracking software right now, like Google Analytics. There's so many different ones that you can get. Google Analytics is a simple and easy one. I'm totally fine with that. It's usually not hard to get the most important pieces of information out of these things, and there's tons of free options. But whatever you do, just install something now if you don't have something on there, because you want to be able to track your data, because you want to be able to know where you're at now, so you can know where you're at in the future, if it's improvement or not. Like I showed you in here, you can easily filter. This is just the main. I just go to the website, I choose the time frame, and then boom, this pops up. It's very easy for me to look at traffic from search engines. Again, it's not perfect, but it's pretty close. It gives me a pretty good estimate. And you can check monthly or 90-day and go from there. You can also look at the entrance pages. I can navigate to the different URLs that this traffic is coming from, and we can see, based upon that, sometimes we can make conclusions on where the traffic has really come from, what is really providing the value. Especially when you combine that with the sales generated, and ultimately that's sort of like a third metric. If it's generating sales that just weren't there before, and you're not doing other kinds of marketing, or it's just a sudden spike in it, and the rankings and the traffic are increased, then we have a pretty good sign that SEO is working. Again, you analyze this together with the website lead and sales generation. And if all three point to positive, then things are probably positive. If all three point to negative, then it's probably negative. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes it just takes longer. Sometimes there's been issues. Projects have unique circumstances that need to be solved sometimes, and things can be delayed. That doesn't mean that the plan is not accurate or not going to provide you with a lot of value. It's just sometimes the situation you hire a contractor to inspect something that stinks underneath your floor, and it turns out you need to tear out a bunch more floors, mold like all across your house. Okay, sometimes that's what happens with SEO. It really depends on a lot of things, but so you can't completely control that. But again, you look at, well, how am I going to know if this is working? Sometimes, I'd say most of the time within 3 months we can see some sort of improvement, but sometimes, a lot of times it takes us 6 months of really good putting the piece together right, and then you see, okay, now we've built a business asset that is extremely valuable, and that is going to continue to provide value to my business on an ongoing basis. So Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and if you'd like help knowing if your SEO works, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. Have a great day. Bye.